Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I decided that we should look back around 2 years ago and look at the cards and how the format was. And also, a lot of these decks are voting or will have already voted, and I just wanted to look at them and see what things are like because it's pretty cool. I definitely played during this time as well. Um, and it was pretty interesting. This was the release of Fusion Strike as well. So, Fusion Strike, for those of you who know about that set, the best deck was Mewtwo Max. And it looked something like this. You got your Mewtwo Maxes, your Genesect Vs, your Meloettas, and that was about it. You had Elisa Sprinkle as well, but it was very straightforward power tablets. You could make a few changes, but very straightforward, a very boring deck. There's not too much to say about it, other than that it's boring. Also, we will be skipping any decks that have rotated already, like Zacian, um, I don't know, like a lot of these decks are like partially rotated. So we'll see what we do about this. So Move Genestic, though, I think you all know that one. Jolteon and Inteleon, though. So we'll look at Inteleon Engine decks. For those of you who don't know, the Drizzile has an ability on, or had an ability on play. When you evolved into it, you search deck for any trainer. Inteleon also had an ability like that. And then you had the Inteleon that is currently in the format, which pings damage on your opponent's Pokemon. Super powerful, are pretty good very good within the like engine, allowing you to set up stuff like Jolteon VMAX, a spread-based attacker, which does 120 points to your opponent's active and to one of their bench with damage on it. And then you can put the damage with Inteleon or Galarian Zigzagoon with Scoop Up Net. You could like reuse these as well. An Elemental Badge made the attack cheaper, still in the format. Jolteon with Iron Valiant now sees some play. And then Speed, Latent Energy, Capture Energy, and they're just special energies. Nothing too crazy, but they were both good. But didn't like change the game drastically, in my opinion. And then you had like Marnie, that's more or less in the format still. We have like Iono and more importantly Judge, which is pretty much the same thing. And Cheryl, this is a deck that could use Cheryl. So it wasn't amazing using Cheryl because it did kind of get one-shotted, but then you had Path. There's a lot of Path to Peak to counter Mewtwo Max. A lot of these decks were to counter Mewtwo Max. Umbreon Urshifu then we see it uses Umbreon VMAX, Urshifu VMAX, or Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. You have Houndoom, which is kind of like Archeops, but it's like a stage 1, but it's worse. The accelerated single strike energies, so you do big damage with your Umbreon and even bigger or decent damage with Umbreon, massive damage with Urshifu. Again, the most is still in format. Crobat V rotated, but it doesn't really matter. We got replacements and stuff. And then like this was a standard supporter lineup of or I don't know, it wasn't super standard at this time, but was before then 4 Marnie, 4 Research, 2 Boss. Um, Now Marnie would be replaced with a supporter like Judge or Iono, probably Iono. So you just have this like really powerful push, these like massive one shots, and these all-in attacks. Umbreon, of course, with its gusting ability, also pretty nice. And then you can recover your special energy with Earn of Vitality, and you just kind of hope it's not the most consistent deck, but it was very solid. Then Urshifu Inteleon, the other Urshifu, Rapid Urshifu, spread-based deck. You have a bunch of stuff going on here, most of it still in format. You have Octillery and Inteleon engines like set up. You have Passimian, Telescopic Sight to boost your bench damage. You have Melanie to allow you to attack easier. And no Inteleon VMAX at this time, so that was not an option to ping. You did have the Chilling Reign Inteleon, the Rapid Strike 1-2 ping, but not the same. And then Medicham V to take some extra prizes, and that was about it. The deck wasn't actually that crazy. It was more complicated at some other points. Duraludon, Duraludon was bad. Like, there's not really any other way I can say it. It was bad. Because it didn't really have an engine. We see a bunch of support. Like, why do you play Avery? Avery was like so trash in this deck. People played it, and it was like really bad. There are some uses, but this deck was not the greatest, but it countered any deck with special energy. So if your opponent was only playing special energy or mostly playing special energy, you'd more or less just win, and then the rest of the time you just like lose. It literally has a 50.1% win rate, which seems like the most like decent to like average to slightly above average win rate ever, but like nah, its matchups were like all over the place. You'd either win a matchup or you'd like lose a matchup. There were some interesting ones, but more or less it wasn't that interesting. You had like Zash, you like didn't have an engine really. Zacian V is kind of an engine, but like not really. But Crushing Hammer, Tool Scrapper, and Team Yellow's Tally plays like weird disruption cards as well. Got better when Arceus came out, but before then it wasn't too good. Dark Inteleon, so Zacian, like all that rotated. Dark Inteleon, I guess, didn't rotate. More or less, this deck rotated. It's really cool though. This is a build kind of like what I played. So you have Galarian Moltres, Baby Galarian Moltres, Sableye V, Galarian Weezing, Hoopa, and Galarian Weezing early game attackers, Sableye V and Galarian Moltres late game attackers. So Sableye V and Galarian Moltres could just hit massive amounts of damage. Hoopa was decent early game pressure, but not amazing. And then Galarian Weezing was a super annoying ability lock based Pokemon. And then you have the Inteleons to ping away and just win through that. Gengar VMAX was actually a new deck at the. Oh, wait a second. We did have Inteleon VMAX. Yeah, I don't know why people weren't playing. I guess they couldn't fit the Inteleon VMAX in with Urshifu. But anyway, Gengar VMAX along with Inteleon VMAX and Mew VMAX were the big three, though Mew was obviously the biggest. But Gengar did counter Mew pretty heavily. It's kind of like the Umbreon Urshifu deck, but it put Gengar instead. Yeah, there's Gengar Umbreon. There might be some other combination as well. There's just Urshifu. I don't know. You could kind of mix and match the three however you wanted. And then we also had Ice Rider Calyrex. This was, again, played with the Italian engine, Path to the Peak, Melanie. So big disruption, very decent damage, but like not one-shotting three prizes, but two-shotting three prizes, one-shotting pretty much everything else. A very solid deck. You could potentially one-shot three prizes with like Inteleon. We didn't have Choice Belt at this point either. Wait, Choice Belt. Victini VMAX, kind of similar to Ice Rider. Very boring, bro. What? It got smited from existence. It was so not fun. Okay. Yeah, so this deck did not play anything interesting at all. Well, it played Kabu, but that means you just need, like, don't have a bench. Yeah, so Victini VMAX, it's 220 on Vs, which is good, I guess. It's kind of like Ice Rider, but like it plays four Fan Waves, four Pokemon catchers. Like it just sucked to play against. It wasn't very good. It was okay, but it was really boring. Suicune Ludicolo, aka Opticolo, sometimes. You have Suicune V still in format, can be rotating. And then the Italian engine, so you can ping. And then you have Ludicolo also still in format. If you evolve into it, your basics do 100 more this turn. The idea is that you can just like one-shot stuff with this basic Pokemon. You have these kind of interesting changing combos that you can do as well, which are super fun. This was definitely one of my favorite decks to play from this era. I loved it. And my main deck was probably Dark Inteleon, but Suicune Ludicolo is super fun as well. Eternus was kind of falling off at this point, but kind of came back with Mew as well. And more or less you just like one-shot stuff with Eternus. I guess this rotated, has already rotated, so we don't need to talk about it too much. Inteleon, this is the Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX, which was a deck. I guess this does play Urshifu. Not as popular as just Urshifu without it, though. Leafeon VMAX, this was like really good for a short period. But you had Galar Mine. I guess it was a decently long period, but Galar Mine was super good, which just increased your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost, which meant because you do more for your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost, so it just adds damage. There were some other ways to increase damage, but they rotated before this. Galamine has since rotated, so Leafeon is kind of bad. But yeah, you pretty much just do that. Upstrike Malamar. I don't like this deck. I think a lot of people know I don't like it. I find it super boring. You have Malamar, you just hit like decently hard with Rapid Strike Tentacles. And with that, you just go ahead and potentially one-shot anything. Kind of high rolly, kind of a deck some people like. Suicune Inteleon more or less the same thing as Suicune Ludicolo. There were obviously differences. The one didn't play Ludicolo, but more or less similar as well. Sylveon VMAX, this was super sick. It's still decent. Lots of different ways to play it, but Sylveon VMAX still in format. Let's see, does it play the tool? Yeah. Ribbon Badge means you give up one less prize, but then Sylveon VMAX, you hit 70, 30 more for each different type of Pokemon on your bench. You can pay this with two energies. There wasn't double turbo, but you could do Rap Strike and another energy. Then all of a sudden you're like one-shotting, or probably not one-shotting, but potentially probably two-shotting, potentially one-shotting two prizes, two-shotting three prizes, so pretty decent there. There were a lot of like generic VMAXs. A lot of them were evolutions as well. Hoopa Moltres, same thing as Dark Inteleon. It's like actually the same. It's like pretty much the same deck. Let's see. Yeah, some minor differences, but not that different. And then let's see, and then more like a mix and match, but the biggest deck that fell off ever. This is a Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. It's kind of boring, so this list looks pretty boring. But it like potentially could one shot anything, but once rotation hit it the first time, it just like died. It was really sad. It wasn't actually that sad. The deck wasn't very fun. But this is also during PCGO era where like the good decks were disliked a lot. Like just good decks now are disliked some, but because they're pretty accessible to most players who play on like live, they're not hated as much because you could just play them and then you'll see that they're not as good as they like they see when you're playing against them. But in PTGO, you just get like rolled over by these decks and just have a bad time. But anyway, the deck wasn't that good. It ended up falling off pretty hard. Um, and then and Shadow has kind of been reprinted with Zadu. Dragapult of VMAX, really interesting card as well. This one actually rotated though, so we're not going to get into too much. Rayquaza VMAX that flopped. And that's about it. You got mix and matching Urshifu VMAX with Glen Moltres V. I think that's what it is. Suicune V with Moltres, Glen Moltres V. As I said, Gengar VMAX with Umbreon VMAX. You had Leafeon VMAX with like Moltres. What's this deck? I don't like remember this deck. I kind of remember there was a thing, but it wasn't that popular. And you had still Journey VMAX. I guess I should talk about this one. This one did rotate, but it like didn't do anything. Pretty much that's like all it just sat there and healed, and then like your opponent quit and you'd win. Obstagoon and Teleon. Obstagoon as well is an interesting card, still in format, right? Not this Obstagoon. This Obstagoon with Merciless Strike pairs well with Inteleon, but it like does decent damage for a stage 2. Nothing that impressive, but yeah, Surface, Moltres, Blissey V, Glen Weezing. Most of these are pretty like I don't know. There's a lot of Inteleon energy and a lot of Glen Moltres V because people wanted to counter me VMAX any way they could, and that was Path and Dark type. You can also do Special Energy, target that with like Duraludon, but it wasn't as common. But overall, I hope you like this video where I turned back time a little bit, looked at some older decks. If you want me to see me do this again, I'd love to. I'd also love to do some other stuff. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.